Hello and welcome to another episode of View from the Gallowgate, the best Newcastle United fan podcast. I'm your host, Ian Smith, the Newcastle United season ticket holder in the Gallowgate end, of course. And this week I'm joined by two other Gallowgate enders, Gordon and Lee. And Lee, you've only just moved back to the Gallowgate after a stint in Level 7. How does it feel to be back in the best stand in world football?
It's fair to say the atmosphere is a bit different, I tell you. No, it's literally not far away from where I used to stand in the scoreboard. It is, it feels like going home after a long, long time.
Yeah, how long have you not been in the Gallowgate end for?
I haven't been in the Gallowgate since the late 80s. I haven't been that long. I was 16, 17 the last time I stood on the Gallowgate, and then I moved to the Midlands and what have you, and all of the games I went to subsequent to that were in seats. So yeah, it's nice to be back home, as I call it.
And Gordon, you've been in the Gallowgate end a little bit longer than that. You've been in the Gallowgate end for I don't even know how many years since it was built as in its current iteration.
I'm not that old. You mean the Gallowgate as it is now, or do you mean the Gallowgate as it was before? Because I've been going since I was
in its current state.
Yeah. No, I was Gallowgate originally from 1972 onwards when I started work, and I went in the Gallowgate end, and it was always the Gallowgate. I just loved it there. The one season we had out the Gallowgate was, of course, the season that we got promoted when we were in the West Stand paddock, and then we moved to Leazes End where it was built, and then we were lucky enough to be able to get tickets back in the Gallowgate end when it opened in 1994.
I think it was 94, wasn't it?
So it's to be a 30th anniversary next year.
It's mad, yeah. So we sat in there for 30 years. Yeah, my first season ticket obviously was in the Milburn paddock. Just to the, I suppose the right as you look at it, or the left is if you were sat in it, of the dugouts. Very, very different at that point. And obviously the dugouts have changed again this week. By all accounts, they're going to be new ones for the Champions League spec ones. I don't know what that means, Lee. Do you? Any idea?
Not got a clue. I heard rumours that they were building a stanchion at the back of it so a mad dog could stand up on the back of it and wind Jurgen Klopp up this Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's the case. I can't see it though.
Yeah, well, we've got loads coming up on this show. So obviously we will talk about the Liverpool game. We're going to dip into the Man City game. We're going to talk a little bit about the Amazon Prime documentary because there's 3 episodes that most people have seen. 3 episodes. We'll talk a little bit about how some people have actually seen all 4. And then we're going to talk about our unpopular Newcastle opinions as well. So that should be quite fun. I've got a couple. Well, I've got 3, but I've got one that's definitely very controversial. So that should be quite fun. So we'll get into that in a little bit later on. Let's kick off with some news, though, and quite a bit of transfer news to report today, with Outcast winger Ryan Fraser joining Southampton on loan, but also rumours that club captain Jamal Lascelles could be moving to Turkish side Besiktas, and Isaac Hayden might be moving to Luton. Let's start with the one that has happened first, though. Ryan Fraser's gone on loan to Southampton. What are your thoughts on that one, Gordon?
Well, it's obviously good for the club to get him off the books. I suppose a bit disappointing. It's just a loan, but he had to be moved on. He was clearly out of favour for whatever reasons. So he was just there, wasn't he? He was with the reserves and things. So yeah, he's gone to Southampton. He can do a job for them, I'm sure. I'm quite happy for him to go because he was clearly not going to be in our squad.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Lee?
I think Fraser needs to prove his character a little bit because the last 2 clubs he's left, he's left under somewhat of a cloud. We all know the circumstances that he left Bournemouth just after the COVID pandemic broke out and football returned. He refused to fulfil the season of Bournemouth.
Yeah, because that's right. Because the issue there was because the season was prolonged, his contract didn't cover that extension, and he refused to do it. Right?
He refused to play the extension of the season, didn't he, to protect his free transfer, and that was under Eddie Howe. So I always wondered how it would go when he came to Newcastle under Eddie Howe, but something's obviously gone on behind the scenes again. He came to Newcastle on massive wages because of that free transfer that he tried to protect when he was at Bournemouth. So yeah, I think it's good that he's off the wage bill, even if it's only 50% of it, because rumour has it he was on a good 60,000-70,000 pounds a week. So yeah, good to get him moved. It made me chuckle tonight. Newcastle fans have got unrealistic expectations, and everybody on Twitter is celebrating because we've got somebody off the wage bill.
Yeah, the lofty expectations that we all have. We just clearing out the dead wood is celebrated. It's quite funny, really. Obviously, Lascelles possibly getting a move out of Newcastle as well. I think we've probably all got a bit of a higher opinion of Jamal Lascelles, but that might cause a bit of an issue with centre back cover if he does go. Do you think that if he does go, the club will sign someone to replace him before the end of the transfer window?
I'd be very surprised if they didn't, because it does leave us a little bit light on the right-hand side of the centre-halves. I've got no doubt that Botman could make the switch to right side if necessary, if push comes to a shove. But that would potentially mean, I mean, this is on the assumption that Shaw at some point gets injured. And let's be fair, Shaw will get injured. Head injuries within the first 30 seconds of his modus operandi. So if he does go
to that on Sunday,
if he does go Lascelles, I'd be very surprised. What I would expect, I'd expect to see a loan again, similar to Lewis Hall, a loan with a potential obligation or option. But yeah, I would expect them to bring somebody in. When Howe said the business was done, I don't think Howe expected to lose Lascelles at that point.
Yeah, I agree with that. Gordon, what do you think just about Jamal Lascelles in general? Like, obviously, I think he's been a great servant to the club, and I would wish him very, very well if he does go.
Oh, definitely. I've got a high regard for Jamal Lascelles. He was one that, in the early days, he took a lot of stick, and even over the years, there have been sort of people having a go at him. But I think his leadership qualities in the promotion and getting us back into the Premier League and just being as a character, but he's never really let us down as a player. I mean, he's not the top quality, we know that, but what I loved last season, of course, was his leadership off the pitch, and it was clearly that Eddie Howe really respected and had that in the dressing room along with some of the other key leaders. So he had an important part to play, even though minutes-wise on the pitch he didn't actually play, that much. So no, I'd be sad to see him going away. I thought he would still be here, and I think Eddie Howe probably thought the same. Going back to Lee's comment, I think if the Celts go, I think they will bring somebody in. I think they'll have to, because it will leave us very threadbare in a position I still think we're threadbare now. Let alone if Lascelles scores. So
I think that's totally right. I think we're already as weak as we would want to be in that position without losing. Yeah, like you say, not the greatest centre half in the world, but certainly a solid backup option at this point. Someone who could step in for a few games. And I just think, going back to that point about the captaincy, I think the way the club have handled him being the club captain and then Trippier being the on-field captain has been absolutely superb. Like, it could have been a situation that went very, very wrong and caused a very bad atmosphere within the dressing room and the club. But the fact that Howe kind of included Lascelles in everything, despite him not playing regularly, I think it's been a masterstroke actually in how to deal with that kind of tricky situation.
Yeah. And I think the thing there, Ian, is that you've got to say the two players themselves, Lascelles and Trippier, have shown themselves to be absolutely true model professionals in every sense of that word. That they've both embraced it, and I've got high regard for Jamal Lascelles. I've got high regard for Trippier, obviously, and I just think Trippier's influence on the club cannot be underestimated at all. And I'm sure people don't. They know. What he's done the last 18 months. So, I think, but Eddie Howe, I think it's just Eddie Howe, isn't it? He thinks about some of these situations and how the players, their welfare and their well-being, and I think it comes across, and that's why we've got a happy United squad.
I think there's huge mutual respect between the three of them. Looking at Trippier in post-match interviews last season when he was referred to as the captain, every single time, and you can go back and watch all of his interviews, if he was ever referred to as the captain, he always made a point of saying Jamal's the captain.
Yeah.
in pre-season when Jamal Lascelles was doing a press conference with Eddie Howe, and it was raised by one of the media. Eddie Howe stepped in and went into a 90-second speech about why Jamal Lascelles is held in such high regard. And we all know what Eddie Howe thinks of Kieran Trippier. So the three of them are very, very tight. Now, what apparently is on offer from Besiktas is a 3 to 4 year contract. Now, Jamal Lascelles, as you say, has served Newcastle United really, really well for almost 10 years. He's not short of a testimonial.
Wow.
He's not far short of a testimonial. If he's got 3 or 4 year contract on the table in Besiktas and he's on good money over there, I wish the lad good luck. I genuinely go and fleece them for everything you can get out of them. For the last 2 or 4 years.
I wonder, Lee, if that's actually the club looking as well to maybe do him a favour for his service. You know, like, because sometimes that happens in football, doesn't it? Where it's like, you've treated us well, let's try and get you a good contract somewhere else. And how old is Lascelles now? Is he over 30?
I would say he's probably 30. I don't know.
To be able to get a 3 or 4 year contract when you're above 30 is a big deal, isn't it? So, good luck to him. I say I think we all agree on that one. Possible move for Isaac Hayden as well, possibly going to Luton. I would sort of echo a few of the sentiments around Lascelles with Hayden, just a good servant to the club. He's not really needed anymore, and if he gets his move, then good luck to him.
Yeah, I had a lot of time for Isaac Hayden when he was a staple part of the first team. He was a liability around the box for giving free kicks away. He was. The team and the club has moved on since that time. He was a consummate professional. He was. He gave everything for the club. He never had a bad word to say. Carried himself brilliantly. And I'll always thank him for... he scored the last goal at St James's Park before the COVID outbreak, I think it was.
Yeah, that's a good little fact.
Against Chelsea.
The
last goal Newcastle scored at St James's Park before lockdown was Isaac Hayden against Chelsea in the 93rd minute, and it was 18 months before Newcastle scored at St James's again through Joe Willock against Sheffield United in May 2022.
What a wonderful fact, Lee. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that to us.
That's quite impressive.
I like that. Good knowledge. Let's move on a little bit then. So the club's ticket and loyalty point issue has been in the news this week. It certainly has on social media anyway. And it looked like from a lot of the week, the allocation for the Brighton away match may not sell out. And that was until the requirement to purchase a ticket dropped to 1 or more loyalty points. Then it sold out pretty quickly. So the big question is this a sign that the new policy is actually working, Lee? What do you reckon?
I think there's a combination of things going on here. I think the fact that we've got rail strikes on the day in question. I wouldn't fancy walking to Brighton and back. So rail strikes combined with, let's be honest, an absolutely mental kickoff time.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying it's 8 o'clock on Saturday night?
Oh, let me check. I thought it was. I know it's. I thought it was.
It's either 5:30 or 8 o'clock. But whichever way you dress it up, it's a ludicrous kickoff time for Newcastle to travel to Brighton, particularly when you've got rail strikes on the cards. If you remember, Brighton versus Crystal Palace was postponed last season because of rail strikes. And there's been nothing said about this fixture. On the subject of the club's away ticketing policy, this potentially could have been one of my unpopular opinions. I think the club have got the right idea, but I think the implementation and the communication around it's been poor. I'm a long-term season ticket holder on very, very low loyalty points. For one reason or another, I never built up a huge amount of loyalty points due to coaching kids football and what have you. I do enough travelling going to home games. It's 200 miles there and back for me to go to a home match. So I never built up a lot of loyalty points. And I, therefore, probably got to 4 or 5 games a season away from home. And I relied on the very thing that the club is trying to sort of cut out, which is what I refer to as loyalty point hoarders. People who've built up loyalty points for years and years and years and years, but only pick potentially a selected few games a season where they'll actually travel to the game. But every single away game, they'll buy the ticket, pocket the points, and pass the ticket on, not for profit. I've never bought one for rather face value, but they'll pass the ticket on to the likes of myself. And as I say, I took advantage of that situation last year 4, 5, 6 times. I think I got to 6 away games last season. Now, what the club's introduced will stop that. And it needs...
Does it not... But, Lee, does it not make you feel a bit more confident now that... okay, it's Brighton away. It's probably the trickiest one we're going to sell out. Does it not give you more confidence that actually... I don't know how many loyalty points you've got, but does it not give you more hope that actually it would be easier to get one off your own back now?
No, the only way I'll get a ticket for an away game this season with my loyalty point total, I think, is through the ballot. I think Brighton's a one-off. I think it's and Man City the previous week. There's two real interesting games there. You've got Man City away from home, European champions, on Saturday night. The points were always going to drop because you're not going to have a massive appetite for going to Manchester City on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock. Brighton, very, very similar. I think the other away games subsequent to those two, I think you'll be looking at them selling out at 50, 60, 70 loyalty points. Now, that rules me out of getting a ticket through my loyalty points. If I get a ticket this season, say it'll be through a ballot. So I don't think it increases my chances per se, but I do think the idea that the club have come up with in terms of the identification checks is the right way to go about it, but it's been implemented poorly. The idea that some people's tickets have automatically been, I don't know what you want to call it, defaulted.
Cancelled, semi-cancelled.
You've got people turning up 5 minutes before kickoff, 10 minutes before kickoff, and that ticket's been cancelled before they've arrived, and then they've had to go traipsing off to a ticket office. That's the wrong way to go about it. But the idea is there. I just think it needs a bit of fine-tuning, and ultimately, as I say, it'll do what the club's trying to do, which is stop people from hoarding loyalty points who potentially don't go to games. And I say I've been the benefit of that for a long time myself.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. I think it comes down to implementation generally, and I think. But what I do know is that the club will be open to fan feedback on this, and I think it's something that supporters will be able to work on with the club. And it is a new system, and it will have teething issues. They will get things wrong. They have got things wrong. Some of the stories I read online from the Man City game. I read one lass who just couldn't get in, even though she had a valid ticket and pretty much went to every away game last season. She couldn't get in, and in the end, the clubs admitted that there was an error on the Man City side and the Newcastle side, and that should never have happened. Now, that might just be bad luck, but it should never be. She should never have been in that position where, as a fan with an actual genuine ticket, she couldn't get in. That's not.
So I know what you're saying about the club listening and the club acting. I think a real good example was a few weeks ago with the ballots for members, where you were basically put into a pot, you got charged 44 to 74 quid. You didn't know where you were going to get a ticket. They acted on that very, very quickly because that was something in their gift that they could actually act on. I don't think with the away tickets approach, there's a perfect solution that will suit everybody. So I think it'll be far, far more difficult for the club to put something in place that solves all of the issues we've seen over the first 2 away games of this season. So I think this one's going to take quite a little bit more time than the one we saw a few weeks ago for them to resolve.
Yeah, I agree with that. Anything to add?
Can I just ask a question on this? So I was saying that the only people, there that can go to an away match are the named season ticket holder. So is that what we're saying? Yeah. Because like you, we had the situation where I would get tickets.
Looks like we might have lost Gordon temporarily there for a
second. We've lost him. Somebody put 50 pence in Gordon.
We might need to move on. We'll come back. We'll see if we can get him back. Let's move on though, Lee. Obviously, last weekend we travelled to the Etihad to play the Premier League and European champions Man City. That ended in a 1-0 defeat for the Magpies, obviously, unfortunately. And a lot of discussion after this match was about the performance, with some players in particular being singled out for criticism. And I don't know, what do you reckon to this one? This is a bit of a tricky one.
If you don't mind, let me talk about the game first.
Yeah, let's go for that.
Before we talk about, everybody's seen the online furore that's gone on this week, and everybody's got their opinions on that.
Yeah.
But first things first, last Saturday night at 5-8, if you'd have offered me a 1-0 defeat or a defeat of any shape and our goal difference not taking an absolute hammering, would I have taken it? I'll be perfectly honest with you, quite possibly.
Yeah.
People are going. This team's going to go to City this season, probably play better than us and get their arses handed to them.
Yeah,
I don't think we played particularly well. I think we showed them far too much respect, and particularly in the first half. But I don't think we played particularly poorly. I thought the defensive back five were outstanding. Sven Botman, he just showed what he's going to do for the back four for the next 6, 7, 8 years. I thought they were absolutely outstanding. So there was a lot of positives to take away from the game. But I think we, on the whole, showed them too much respect. And they are the best footballing team I've seen in my lifetime as a club side.
Yeah, they're amazing, aren't they?
They're just unbelievable.
You just got to doff your cap sometimes to them, don't you? I agree. I actually thought, I was thinking when I was watching it for the first 15, 20 minutes, I was thinking, we're doing really well here. Like, we're really solid. Our lines were completely compact. We weren't really giving them anything. But we never, ever, and this never really happened in the whole game, maybe slightly more in the second half, but certainly in the first half, we literally didn't get out of our half. And that was disappointing. That was really disappointing to me because we gave Man City better games last season. And my expectation, I mean, I even said on this podcast that there was a chance we could go there and win. Yeah. And I still believe that could have been the case, but we didn't, whatever the game plan was, we didn't execute it well enough. And like, I agree with you, I think we gave them a bit too much respect. And ultimately, I did feel disappointed at the end of the game because I don't think we did ourselves justice with how good we know we can be, even against Man City. So
the good thing for me is both Howe and every player that's been interviewed since the game, they've all, to a man, come out and said, we didn't perform.
Yeah.
Now, 3 years ago, under he who we'll not name, if we'd have gone to the Etihad and lost 1-0.
He's coming out of retirement league.
Yeah. But you know yourself, if we'd have gone to the Etihad 3 years ago and lost 1-0, it would have been the best result since 1969. It would. But every single player and how have come out and have said, we didn't perform, we didn't do ourselves justice, which gives me a lot of hope for this coming weekend.
Well, one thing I would say is, and I'll bring you in a second, Gordon. One thing I would say is, under Howe, so far, whenever we've had a bad or a poor performance, we've always responded well in the next game. And that gives me hope for Sunday that we'll at least perform well. Who knows what the result will be, but I think we'll have some kind of reaction to the work. Because I think you're right. I think the players and the management were disappointed with what they did at the Etihad, which speaks volumes for where we are as a club. Gordon, what do you reckon?
Well, first of all, sorry about the technical thing. My laptop just died, and now. Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the match. I haven't seen, so I kind of talked about it in terms of me watching it, which I would have preferred. But I read a lot of the reports. I heard lots of the opinions, and it basically at one end of it seemed to be that we were dire, we were terrible, we should shoot all the players, they should be all sold off. To the other end, where we're saying actually this was actually not a bad result. We would take them 1-0 to Man City. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And that, we've got to recognise we were playing, the best side, as you indicated, Lee. I mean, they're just amazing. And also, when you take into account their record at home this year, I mean, they've won every game, and I think it's in all competitions, and it's astounding. It was their first home game of the new season. They had all line cups late. All I've said, I just think what we said about our players saying we didn't perform fills me with optimism, because I think the result maybe was always going to be hard to avoid losing to them, but I think the lessons we will take from that in going forward will be basically we will be fired up for the next game. I think you that's what you're going to allude to there, Ian, in terms of Liverpool.
It was their 17th consecutive home victory.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't realised that until I started reading about it on Monday, and that's phenomenal, isn't it? You know, so maybe we people are being too harsh, and again, is it this rising expectation that, you know we are a good side. I think we said it last week, and that there's no difference sitting here this Friday and thinking about we are a good side, and Sunday will be a different occasion. The thing about Sunday is we might still lose, but we've got to be optimistic with this team and the way we go about our business and the way we prepare.
I think the performance on Sunday will be better regardless of result. That's what I think. I think we'll give it a go against Liverpool, and whatever will happen will happen. Let's just go on to this thing about criticism then. So, you know, can we be critical of players if they've had a bad game? You know, is that okay? Because the debate this week, you know, obviously Bruno, he kind of reacted negatively on Twitter to a prominent NUFC account. Where's the line here? Like, is it okay for me to say I didn't think Almiron played well because I didn't think he played well? But but that doesn't mean I'm slagging Miggy off. Do you know what I mean? Like, there were other players. I didn't think Joe Linton played well. I didn't think Isak played well, but he was isolated.
Problem is, it's not that you're not allowed to say a player, kids had a bad game, or they're not played up to what they're capable of, you know, and there might be lots of reasons for that. But I think sometimes on Twitter and the social media generally, it's the over the top criticism. It's like we're the best players in the world one week against Aston Villa, and the next week they couldn't kick a ball. They looked absolutely hopeless, and that's the thing. And over the years, I've had many, this, Ian, discussions with people around us in the crowd who slagging off players when I don't think the player deserves to be slagged off. They're not playing particularly well, but actually, they're not actually as bad as what some people are making out. So I think it's the degree and the type. That particularly, that tweet that you're talking about with the pictures of them, I'm taking it. Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
dreadful. And I mean, it was unnecessary. But it's just.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit. Was the tweet that bad, or was it bad because Bruno reacted to it?
Well,
because it was a rhetorical question.
Yeah. I just saw it and I thought, I don't like that. This canvassing of opinions as well, and it's almost black and white. Everything's got to have an opinion afterwards with a poll. Just stop it.
Hey, Toon Polls is a good account, I'll have you know, Dad. Lee, what do you reckon?
I'm not saying it isn't.
I'm going to agree with you. A couple of things about social media. You know me, Ian, I'm very active on Twitter. After a defeat, doesn't matter whether we're playing Man City or Cambridge United in the third round of the FA Cup, after a defeat, I avoid social media because the overreaction to a defeat is probably 10 times more amplified than the reaction when we win. So I try and avoid it after a defeat wherever possible. I think I'm going to 100% agree with you, Ian, about the tweet in question that kicked everything off on Tuesday morning. I don't think the tweet in itself was that bad. I genuinely don't. I mean, let me read the tweet to you. I've got it in front of me. Okay. Is it too early in the season to start focusing blame onto individual players? Was there an overreaction to the loss to Man City? Now, for me, there's a couple of mistakes they've made there. They've specifically posted a picture of 4 players, which Gordon, I think you referred to. So they've posted a picture of Dan Burn, Miggy Almiron, Bruno Guimaraes, and I think the other one was Joelinton. Yeah.
And they've been picked specifically, haven't they? Because they were the players who were coming under criticism. And that's
were coming under criticism from the people who, the extreme reactions on Twitter, they didn't play well. But if you ask any one of those 4 players, I think they would all admit they didn't have the best game. Yeah. So that was the first mistake. They've singled out 4 players. But the biggest mistake I think they've actually made is both of the questions they asked. Is it too early in the season to start blaming players? And was it an overreaction? The answer to those 2 questions is so bloody obvious. Yes, it's too early. It is. And yes, there was an overreaction. If the answer is so obvious, don't ask the question. Don't put it out there online.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But the problem you've got with an account like that is the size of the account. I mean, we're talking an account that was 150,000 plus followers up until Tuesday.
Yeah.
They've lost around about 10% of the following. They have to put content out. They have to put content out to generate revenue. I think what that account particularly, and potentially some others might take heed of it, is they might think a little bit more before they put that content out and not put content out off the cuff to generate a reaction, because the reaction they certainly didn't expect Bruno to react to it the way he did.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of back and forth. Was it Bruno? Was it one of Bruno's admins? I firmly believe that was Bruno himself who tweeted the response, because I don't think one of his admins would have it the ability, not the ability, but the level of responsibility to be able to tweet such a immersive response to a tweet. That has to have come from Bruno.
Actually, I think Eddie Howe was asked about it in his press conference today, and I think Eddie Howe made it clear that actually it was a genuine thing from Bruno.
I thought it was.
Yeah. So, Mark, one of our viewers, says he loves Bruno, but he does think he needs a bit of a thicker skin. Joe Linton went through wild abuse and didn't react. And I guess it comes down to players, doesn't it? Like, if you, I mean, we all love Bruno. I mean, he's fantastic, but he's very, very emotional, isn't he? He's a man who is led by his emotions, and maybe Twitter is not the best place for him if he's being criticised. I don't know. It's not the healthiest of places at the best of times. At Twitter, it can be awful. It's a cesspool.
I want Bruno to be emotional, though. I think Bruno, you take away the emotional side of Bruno, the emotional character that he displays, and I don't think you've got the same footballer.
I totally agree with that. I'm just saying, I think in terms of social media, I mean, I don't want Bruno to change how he is on the pitch or how he is around the club, or because he is who he is. But if opinions like that are going to get to him, maybe he does what Eddie Howe does and just shouldn't be going on there, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and maybe in the background, Eddie Howe might be talking about that, you know. The thing is, I agree. I mean, Bruno is very emotionally led, isn't he? In fact, we had this conversation last week, and we had it on the opening day when we were looking at Sandro Tonali and Bruno, and they are two brilliant footballers, but they're temperamentally, they're miles different, aren't they? I mean, you've got emotionally led Bruno, who gets sometimes sucked into silly tackles and because he's getting hacked all over the place, and then Tonali, who, you know, he's not going to be smiling a lot on the even on the pitch, is he? You know, so
cool.
That's different. And I think you take that passion away from Bruno, and you lose part of what Bruno is. So
yeah,
it's being careful what you say on these social media sites, isn't it? And maybe the reaction was over the top, but equally the initial thing about digging at them was also wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's the age-old problem with social media. It's people can just write stuff without really putting much thought into it. They can put opinions out into the ether, but actually it can have a real impact on people, and I think we just all have to kind of remember that a bit.
Just a last point on the subject. That account was a notorious tweeter or post or whatever you want to call them, and I'm talking hundreds of thousands of posts. I looked at 4:30 this afternoon, and they hadn't posted since 10:20 a.m. on Tuesday.
Really? They've not. That's amazing, yeah. Because
not a single tweet since 20 past 10 on Tuesday, and that was in relation to the Lewis Hall announcement.
Yeah.
Not a thing since. So there's obviously some strong conversations going on there before they rear their heads again.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe they're just hoping it all passes over or something.
Well,
let's move on then to something that's a bit happier, really. Amazon Prime Video, they've now shown 3 of the 4 episodes of We Are Newcastle United. Some lucky supporters have managed to watch all 4 due to a major error earlier this week when someone at Amazon accidentally released the last 2 episodes for about an hour. However, for most of us, we've seen 3 episodes. I watched the 3rd episode this morning. And so I thought we'd take a bit of time just to reflect on the series as a whole. I'm not sure how much you've seen, Lee or Gordon, but I've seen the 3rd episode today.
the third episode this afternoon. We were away. We came back this lunchtime, and then I watched it this afternoon.
Brilliant. So let's just kick off. Just general thoughts, really, about the series. Then, Gordon, like, what do you make of it so far?
I have to say, when this was first announced we were going to be doing this, I was a little bit worried. I'd seen one or two of these fly on the wall documentary type things in the dressing room and other clubs, and thought, do I really want to sit there and cringe at what's going on and some of the stuff? But having said that, I've watched the three. I must admit the third one I really enjoyed, and that's probably because we won a few matches and people were a lot happier.
I wonder. Yeah, it did cross my mind that, because I said, I put on Twitter earlier, I was like, oh, this is my favourite episode so far. But then I thought, well, yeah, because we didn't lose the cup final in this episode and we were battering everyone, so it kind of makes it a bit easier to watch.
Exactly, but the actual content it's really interesting, and I think it's the behind the scenes stuff that really is the interesting thing. I mean, the football side, Eddie Howe, and what we see about him is probably limited, really, and I think that was alluded to before it was released. But I think it's the boardroom situations. It's the things with Darren Eales going off to America, to Atlanta before the summer tour, and the thing about growing the fan base in other countries. It's the thing about the trip to Adidas, and what a building that was, wasn't it? That their headquarters. I mean, that was really interesting stuff, and it just shows at the level which we are now operating, even down to seeing the improvements to the training centre, which are all in this third. And I think we know that actually those improvements and what they've done is just a start, isn't it? I think that's a tide us over till we find.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole training ground thing. I mean, we're all aware. I assume most Newcastle supporters are aware that that's happened anyway. But it was nice to see in the third episode a little bit more of, like, there was these pools that sort of had floors that raised and lowered, all this kind of stuff. Like, really great stuff that you got access to. But I was sat there thinking, well, let's be honest, they're going to just build a new place at some point in the next few years. There's going to be some absolutely outrageously, because I mean, even I think it was the chairman said, we want to be on the same level as the best in the world. Well, the best in the world, you look at Man City, you look at Leicester City, they have the best training grounds in this country. Liverpool have just opened something, or have they opened Liverpool's? I don't know if it opened or is about to open. They've got a brand new training centre, which is state of the art. Newcastle aren't going to stay where we are. That's just, they've spent a bit of money on it to make it a bit better. But ultimately, there's going to be a redevelopment somewhere in the city with an absolutely state of the art. Just look at like a sporting village like Man City have got. Yeah. Lee, what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
First things first, can we have no spoilers on episode 3, please? Because I've not seen it yet.
Okay.
Work and what have you. Listen, it's Newcastle content. We're all going to lap it up. I've watched the first couple of episodes probably 2 or 3 times, if not 4 times already. I'll watch them again and again. I love the interaction with the fans. I mean, a lot of the people who are actually being featured and interviewed in it, I'm actually friends with.
Yeah.
And I knew that they were going to be in it, but I couldn't say anything to anybody. I'm looking forward to episode 3 for precisely the reasons you've said, Ian and Gordon. The fact that we actually get to win a couple of games. I love the behind the scenes with Eddie Howe and what have you. But I do think, and you can shoot me for saying this, I do think there's an element. Anybody who was expecting an all or nothing style Amazon documentary similar to Tottenham or to Arsenal or Manchester City, they're going to be disappointed, because it's not that. And I do think there's an element of a little bit of PR on the side of the Saudi element of things with Yasser Al-Rumayyan and what have you. I might be over analysing the situation, but I do think there's an element of them trying to portray them in a good light.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I think it is a PR piece. And actually,
it's not your warts and all
no.
or nothing. So, but listen, for me, it's 4 hours of Newcastle United content behind the scenes, and I don't doubt for a minute in 10 years' time I'll still be watching it on replay.
Yeah. I won't spoil episode 3 for people who haven't watched it yet, but I will say a couple of things that I will say without explaining exactly why they're so good. Well, 3 things actually. first of all, the war flag section in episode 3 is sensational, and I'm so glad that they got a big chunk of time throughout that episode. Brilliant, because it is just what they do is fantastic, and it should always be built up and appreciated. Secondly, Darren Eales is an absolute asset to our club. Like when you see him on camera, I just thought his section in the third episode was just fantastic. He goes to America, but when you watch what he does in America, it's really brilliant. And then the third thing that was just brilliant, Eddie Howe's team talk against Man United. I won't spoil it, but it is just brilliant. Like
I'm lucky enough to have spent time with Darren Eales and Peter Silverstone.
Is that right?
Yeah, last October I was invited to, do you know, the supporter engagement event?
Yeah.
Prior to the Crystal Palace game in the League Cup.
Yeah,
I was invited to that, and I was there quite early, and I managed to get around about 30 minutes with Darren Eales and Peter Silverstone.
Wow.
Peter Silverstone had only been there for a day. He had at the time, and they just gave off the impression that they knew exactly where they wanted to go and exactly how they were going to get there. When you compare that to the T lad that we had prior to the executives that we've now got, it's just chalk and cheese. So yeah,
did you get what in particular did you chat about with him? Like, what was there anything in particular that he said, or was it just a general vibe you got?
It was just a general vibe. I mean, it was 8 months ago now, but I mean, particularly from Peter Silverstone, Darren Eales gave me the overwhelming impression that fan engagement was massively, massively important to him. He totally admitted that they would make mistakes, but they would do what they could to rectify those mistakes and learn from those mistakes. But Peter Silverstone was just very, very, very polished. Talked about some of the things that he did at Arsenal in terms of revenue and how he looked to increase that. Talked about being realistic in terms of how quick he was going to do it and be able to do it because of the infrastructure and the personnel that he had at the club at the time. But it was just one of those, I was probably around about 25 minutes with the two of them, and I walked away thinking, we're in good hands.
We're in good hands. We're in good hands. That's how it feels, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Anything else you want to add about the Amazon Prime documentary before we move on?
No, not for me. I'm just looking forward to watching episode 3 after Sam Fender tonight.
You will not be disappointed, Lee, I promise you. It was a brilliant, brilliant episode. Okay. It's that time of the show where we do something a little bit different, take an alternative view on the world of Newcastle United. And this week, we are laying out some of our most unpopular opinions. It's a chance to get things off our chests, maybe mention things that bother us and eat away at us, or perhaps things we can't understand, why the hell other people don't feel the same way we do. So we'll go around a couple of times. If you're watching this live on YouTube, then you can feel free to chip in the comments, and we'll try and show some. But Lee, I'm going to start with you. What's your first unpopular opinion?
My first unpopular opinion. So there's been a lot of celebration amongst the fan base since I think it was around about 2:00 last Saturday afternoon when some junior executive at Amazon dropped the biggest bollock of the career so far and released episode 3 and episode 4. And it came to light that Newcastle had been in Germany to talk to Adidas, and from 24-25, Adidas will be our kit supply. There's been lots and lots of celebrations. My unpopular opinion is that the return of Adidas might not be the cause for celebration that a lot of people think it will be.
Okay, go on.
My reason for that. So for every 1995, 1996 or 96, 97 Grandad shirt as worn by Shearer and Ferdinand, and the away kit as worn by Beasley and Ginola, there is a 2009, 2010 custard cream away kit, or there is a 1997 home shirt with a big grotesque shield on the back. Oh, yeah.
Right. So one of my opinions, right? This happened last week as well. One of my opinions was that it was a bit more precise than what you've just said. my unpopular opinion is that the 1997 to 1999 home kit was bloody awful, and I don't understand why so many people love it.
Are you on about the Grandad kit?
No, I'm on about the one that followed the Grandad kit, the one with the shield on the back. It was a terrible kit, and everyone at the time hated it. And yet, these days, I see people loving it, and I just do not understand why. But so I'm kind of with you on this, Lee, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So there's I think because Adidas gave us probably, in most people's opinion, the best kit we've ever had. I know there's a couple of others. I know we've had conversations about kits in the past, Lee, and I suspect your favourite might not be that 95 to 97 kit. I don't know. Because I seem to remember you talking about one from the 80s at some point.
1983 84 promotion kit.
So there are other options out there. But
that one, yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting opinion about the Adidas one. I'm excited about Adidas. But
if I could just finish on the subject by saying, if you look at Juventus's kit from last season, Adidas absolutely ruined it. The stripes were made out to look like tyre tracks.
Yeah.
They were. Now, so as I say, let's hold our water and let's see what they come up with. One good thing about Adidas coming back is the leisure wear, tracksuits, jackets. There'll be a massive improvement from what we've got now. If you go on Depop, what you call it, Adidas retro jackets, Newcastle jackets are going for 200, 300, 400 quid on Depop at the minute. My son's just bought one. So you'll see a massive improvement in them. But I do worry about what they're going to serve us up next season.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I like it, Lee. Gordon, give us your first unpopular opinion.
Right. Okay. I mean, I said to you before we came on air that I don't think I've got unpopular opinions because I like to think that I talk sense. But there we go.
Everyone agrees with everything you say.
I thought about this when I was driving around in up near Eyemouth the last couple of days, and when you said one of the things that I've never tuned into as a supporter is the idea of going to the pub before the game and having lots of drinks. I have done it where I've had a couple of pints and maybe, but I've not done it where people get tanked up to the eyeballs and then come in the ground. And that I understand why they do it. I understand the sociability, fine. But then they miss half the game because
you've got to come to me after your dad. You've got to come to me after him.
I'm waiting. I can see your reaction, Lee. I can't wait to hear what you say.
They trot off to the toilet about 5 or 6 times. That's just in the first half. The other thing is, I've noted, and this leads on to something else. At about 30 minutes in the first half, there is like an evacuation of the stand. You get all these people, and I think, where are they going? And they're off either to the lift or to the refreshment or to get their pints in or the scran.
Right, I'm going to have to stop you there, Dad. Right, Lee, come on. I need a response to this because you're shaking your head.
I'm not. I literally. It's as if Gordon's read my mind. I've actually called these people. I've called these people the 55-minute fans, and the reason I call them the 55-minute fans is they literally rock up to the seat either bang on kickoff or just after, having knocked back as many pints as their body can physically handle. 35 minutes to head back down, whether they're going for a piss or another 10 pints at half time in the concourse. They don't come back to the seat till 10 minutes into the second half, and then they bugger off 10 minutes before the final whistle. They get about 55 minutes in on the games.
It's mad. And the other thing about it, Lee, is, and this is another bugbear, and it leads on to the same thing, really, is people who leave before the end of a game. I still don't get that.
Yeah. I've never understood that. We travelled from Scarborough.
I did it for, and I lived in Dalton-in-Furness, Carlisle, and I would never leave a match early. Now, people say, well, I've got to get the bus, I've got to get train. And okay, on a night time, I could maybe think that. But they wouldn't go to the cinema and that like 10 minutes before the end of the film, get up and leave, would they?
What I don't get is how can these people leave if it's like 0-0 or 1-1 or 2-1 and you're chasing the game? Like, how can people leave at that point?
Yeah. I haven't left the game early since 1986.
Is that when you fell on a spike?
No, Peter Beardsley at home to Manchester United in February. I was 13. I thought I was going to die. It was freezing. The pitch was white. I said to my brother, please take me home. I thought I was going to die. And as we were walking down the Gallowgate steps, Peter Beardsley scored an equaliser at home to Man United. And I've never left the game early since.
Learned your lesson.
Only
I've never ever left a Newcastle game early, ever.
I've only done it once, and it was when it was the playoff in 1990 when Gabbiadini got a second goal.
Yeah, you had good reason.
It was turning absolutely horrible inside the ground, and there was going to be a lot of bother. And I just thought, I don't want to be hanging around outside that ground when it kicks off outside. So I left.
We can give you a pass on that one. I think that's fair enough. I mean, I'm of the same opinion really, because I actually like to watch the match when I go to the match. But I guess it's also, we've all done a lot of travelling to get to Newcastle games, so I guess it's never been. I mean, I know you've lived in the northeast, whereas I've always had to drive to matches. But like, it's never been part of our routine to have loads of drinks before the match because we have to drive back or whatever. So it's just never been something that I've done because circumstance means that I've never really been able to anyway. But I've never really understood why people. I can understand having a couple, you know, and meeting some friends, but getting to the point where you're absolutely smashed and you don't even remember the game. What is the point? I'm going to give you my first unpopular opinion. I'm going to start with my biggest one because I've made quite big notes on this one because I need to be quite clear about what I'm saying, okay? So my unpopular opinion is, if we could rebuild St. James's Park on the same site or close to the city centre, a bit like Spurs did, I'd be okay with that. Okay? Now, I love St. James's Park, but if it can't be adequately expanded, I would be absolutely up for knocking it down, starting again to increase the capacity, but in the same location. Because for me, we're sentimental about St. James's Park. We've all got lots of memories tied up in St. James's Park. We've all gone there since we're little. It's important. It's an important place. We love it. I love how it looks. I love everything about it. But I think my biggest fear is if our owner said we need to build a new stadium because we can't renovate St. James's Park well enough, and they said, but we're going to do it out of the city, I would be gutted about that because I think I'm sentimental about the location rather than the stadium, if that makes sense. And I've given this a lot of thought over the last few weeks since they announced that they're going to be doing a consultation. And I've been trying to think, would I be okay if St. James's Park, as we know it, ceased to be? And I think I would be under certain conditions.
I don't think that's an unpopular opinion, personally. Okay. I think you're right in terms of the location is probably more important than the stadium itself. I mean, whilst you were talking there, Ian, I was just thinking back. I mean, my first game was 83, and I look back at the stadium in 83, and it looks nothing like it does now.
When we all started going, it was very, very different.
Back then, when I was a young lad, you're going to have this sort of stadium that, for example, looks like St. James's Park now. Yeah, I would have probably went, oh, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. But I love St. James's Park as it is now. But I do think I agree with you. I think it's as much to do with the location as it is to do with anything else. And I think for me, you've got to stay in that location.
Yeah, so one of the big fears Mark's just said here, there is a risk building a new stadium could lose the atmosphere. One of the things I wrote down but I haven't said yet is, the thing is, if these owners built a new stadium, they would want it to be literally the best stadium in the world. That's how they operate. And I think that they would absolutely take into account the fact that what makes the current St. James's Park unique and special and amazing is the atmosphere. And I think that they would and they could design a stadium that kind of lived up to that in a new guise, if that makes sense. Like I wouldn't be worried about these owners building us a new stadium because I think they would absolutely look into the detail of that.
I think they'll find a way to redevelop it. I really do.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Lee. I think they will. And I think, and I like you both. I don't think it's an unpopular opinion here. And I think, I mean, your first game was 83. Mine was 1967, and it was different again back in 67. And obviously, the Leazes End was still there in its own tin shed format and the one stand. I mean, I've seen so many changes to that ground, but the one thing about it is the fact that it is in the city centre and it's there, and it even allude to in some of these videos, isn't it, about this is the thing that everywhere you go in the city, you see that ground. It dominates, and we get a lot of income as well from it, don't we, as a city, because of the way when people come, the whole thing of the bars and the restaurants,
totally.
And the life in Newcastle is just there.
It's a special location for so many reasons. For the fact it dominates the skyline, but also, like you say, it's literally in the centre of the city, and to have a stadium the size of it, it doesn't happen anywhere else.
You two fellas will be exactly the same as me. There's no better feeling for me, and I'll get it again on Sunday, and I get it every time we have a home game, than when I'm driving down the A184 past Heworth Railway metro station, and you can see it sat on the top of the hill.
Yeah.
And me and my lad sat next to me. I just love that feeling of, we're nearly there. There she is, sat on the top of the hill. And for that not to be there, I mean, even when they were talking about redeveloping Strawberry Place with office blocks and university buildings, I was absolutely devastated. The idea that view was going to be cut off forever. So, listen, Ian, I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. They can redevelop the stadium. I do think they'll redevelop the stadium. It's interesting because when money's no object, they will find a way. And money is no object. They will find a way.
Brilliant. Okay, right.
Oh, go on.
I'm just going to move on just because of time, really. So, Lee, come on, give us we'll do a quicker round, final round. Give us another.
I had my number 3, which was the 55-minute fan. Thanks for that, Gordon. My unpopular opinion number 2. Now, this one will be unpopular, but you've got to bear with me. I don't care what anybody says. We've got by distance the best fans in the country. But the atmosphere at St James's Park sometimes can be really, really poor.
Okay.
It can.
It'll
be bouncing this Sunday. It'll be absolutely bouncing this Sunday because of the opposition. Big games against Liverpool, Man U, Arsenal, they always set the pulses racing and what have you. And St James's Park's going to be feral come 4:30 on Sunday. But I think back to games against the likes of Bournemouth and Palace and Leeds last season when we dropped points. And I don't think that those teams get away with a point from St James's Park if the atmosphere was the same as it was, for example, against Manchester United back in the spring.
Yeah.
Despite War Flag's best efforts, I'm hoping safe standing is going to have an impact. Yeah. But I just think that the atmosphere at St James's Park can be really, really poor at times.
I think that's true. And there's a bit of a mythology maybe about just how great it is, but I think it is. On its day, it's better. It's as good or better than anywhere. Like it is kind of intimidating and loud. I mean, there was a video of Kevin De Bruyne today saying it was the sort of best atmosphere in the league. But of course, he plays for one of those teams that when they come, it is a good atmosphere. Yeah. I can get on board with that as an opinion. To be fair, I think as fans we could do better against the lesser opposition, so to speak. Yeah.
Agree.
Okay. Gordon, give us a popular opinion.
This very quick one, really. Can we please stop singing songs which mention the word Sunderland in that ground? Because I absolutely hate why they are so irrelevant to us now. It's 8 years since we played. We do not need to tell the people that we hate them or that they are actually in any way important to us because they're just not. So stop singing songs about Sunderland.
Okay. I'll stop singing songs about Sunderland the day Sunderland stop singing songs about us, Gordon.
But that's just going down to their level, that, Lee. We don't need it, you know. And
I'll tell you what,
you love the tune. That really gets on my wick because, you know, it's like, you're up and down like a yo-yo and you don't know what the half stand.
No one likes that chant.
So Honestly.
Stand up if you stand up. That I can't do that one. Does me nothing.
Everyone hates that one. To be fair, that's crap. No, I don't know whoever starts that. They should be ejected from the stadium. Okay, my final one then, just to wrap this up. So Lee, you said we have the best fans in the world or the league or whatever. I can get on board with that, but I absolutely think that as a fan base, as a whole, obviously not every individual falls into this category. I feel like we're too sentimental about stuff. I feel like as fans, we get too attached to kind of play it. Like at the moment, we're on a journey to improve, right? And part of that journey means letting go of players that we love. All right. Now, let's take Alan Saint-Maximin as a prime example of what I'm talking about here. I love Alan Saint-Maximin. I think he did stuff for the club while he was here under Bruce. I mentioned him. I didn't mean to do that, Lee. That I'm very grateful for, right? For me, it was as clear as day that Eddie Howe would get rid of him at some point because he just didn't quite fit the Eddie Howe mold of things. And for me, the outcry from the fans was just a bit over the top about that. That's not to say I don't appreciate what he did. That's not to say I don't like him. It's not to say I don't wish him well. But I just think people want to hold on to players for too long, in a sense. That we need to learn to be a bit more ruthless as fans, I think, is what I'm saying. Especially now we're on an upward trajectory.
Give me a little bit more context on that one, Ian, because based on immediately what you said, that were too sentimental, I disagreed with you. I think we're at a stage still at the moment where the only thing Newcastle fans have got to hang on to is the history. They haven't. And when I'm talking about your history, I'm talking about your 1969s, your 1952s, your 1955s, your 1951 cup wins and things. So I understand that sentimentality and people looking back at sort of icons, Malcolm McDonald, Wyn Davies.
No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, yeah, I don't mean any of that stuff. I mean, the big stuff in the club's history is obviously that's fine to be sentimental about. What I mean is, I'm specifically talking about players in the squad, and I'll mention another one, and this will be unpopular with some people, but like the whole Almiron debate, right? So look, I love the guy, what he's done for the club, but ultimately there's nothing wrong with saying in a year or two he'll need to be replaced because he's not going to be. We'll find someone better. Yeah. And I think, but some fans are like, oh yeah, but look what he's done for us, and like, yeah, look what he's done for us, great, but actually we need to move on. At some point. I think that's
a good debating point, actually, because I listened to a debate on one of the other podcasts earlier in the week, and they were talking about this, about for us to improve as a football club, we will need to replace some of these players who we know are, not at that level that Man City are at. So, and Almiron would fall in that, and there are others within our team.
To be honest, there's going to be players as well that are currently first teamers, but in like 2 years' time, who, we'll probably need to move on because if we want to get to where we want to be. The recruitment team at St James's Park will be ruthless, and I think as fans we need to get used to that happening.
If you think it's bad now, Ian, you wait, because eventually the day will come when there's talk about replacing Howe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, but I guess that'll come down to whether we stagnate under Howe, though, I think, won't it? So
even then, you'll get exactly the same, but magnified 100 times. If you look at what Almiron's done for the club compared to what the general perception of what Eddie Howe has done for the club, they're not comparable. So even if we have stagnated, when it comes to discussions about are we potentially going to replace Eddie Howe, there'll be people crying in the streets.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. I just think generally, I guess it's because I wonder if it's just because we've been so starved of anything to grab onto for the last 15 years. Like, because obviously we can all remember Bobby Robson and the Champions League and Keegan and nearly winning the league, and we've got those memories of stuff. And I think, and I do wonder if the younger generation, and Lee, your son will fall into this category, my daughter falls into this category, like they've literally never experienced anything particularly good happening. So all they've got is some players that they love. And then when those players go, it's like, I don't know, I guess some of those players leave, and then and then don't get replaced adequately. Whereas that's not going to happen in the future either. So that's kind of
that's always been the case, Ian. I mean, I'm sat here thinking about, players being sold. I mean, Malcolm McDonald was mentioned. There was uproar when Malcolm McDonald was sold in '76. And then we lost, and listen to this, we lost Chris Waddle, we lost Peter Beardsley, and we lost Gaza 3 out of 4 summers in the mid-'80s. That was horrendous as a Newcastle fan. And I was almost in tears when Beardsley went to Liverpool, because I knew they were selling him to fund the building of the West Stand. That's what the money was used for. It wasn't.
Thanks, Gordon. I just got over that 30 odd years later.
Well, the point is, isn't it? It took me a long time to get over Beardsley going to Liverpool. I have to tell you, I was really delighted when he came back. But I think it's always gone on, hasn't it? We lost Les Ferdinand, after 2 seasons.
Andy Cole, Andy Cole was my first proper love who got.
The thing is, we get one hero leaves, we get a new hero in, don't we? That's we're prepared.
And what I guess part of this is under Ashley that wasn't always the case. So like we would lose good players and not replace them properly,
This new ownership that will definitely.
I think we have to trust that they'll always. I don't know. It's a bit more exciting. Anyway, right. Very good. Thank you for the unpopular opinions, guys. That was fun. Let's very, very quickly, because we're running over a little bit, let's just very quickly talk about Liverpool at the weekend. How are you feeling in general? Do you feel like we can win? Do you feel like we can draw? Do you think we're going to get over again?
Sunday means a lot. Both of last season's games left a really sour taste.
Yeah.
The 145th minute injury time winner, the Isaac goal that potentially could have been onside, the home game, Nick Pope after 20 minutes, means a lot. I'm going for a 2-1 win.
Yeah, I agree with that scoreline. I'm nervous. I'm really, really nervous, particularly after what we said last week about the Man City game. But I do think St James's Park will be absolutely bouncing. I think there's no love lost for Liverpool. I think Klopp's comments will come back, hopefully to bite him with his own teeth, and it'll be a great day. But we're due a win against them. We haven't beaten them. Is it since 2015 or something?
2015, 15-16 season, yeah.
I mean, we are due a win against Liverpool. So nervous, but hopeful.
I watched Eddie Howe's press conference today, and he was asked about the games last season. And one thing that he said really stood out for me, because he said, I have replayed the last minute of the game at Anfield so many times in my head. And I thought that is really interesting, because that clearly still rankles with him. And that, I think he'll use that and the way Klopp's talked about us since then as fuel for his team talk and fuel to get at Liverpool. And yeah, I am nervous about the game. I think Liverpool will be very dangerous in attack. I think their defence is there to be got at. I hope we win. That's all I can say.
I'm commonly known as Captain Shitpants amongst all of my friends. So they'll be surprised to hear that I'm going for a victory on Sunday. But I think we'll have too much for them.
Yeah. I said last week, if there's one team that we can beat this season, it would be these. I feel like we do owe them one because
I would probably say Luton before Liverpool.
I don't know. I really want to beat Liverpool, and Klopp just annoys me, so we'll see. But I feel good about it. I think there'll be a reaction in terms of like performance. I think we'll be better. We're at home. St James's Park will be bouncing, and it's going to be quite fun. So
Gordon will have 15 pints before kick-off.
Yeah. Anyway, right, this has been a lot of fun. So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in live, and if you're listening to the podcast as a podcast, and see you next week on Newcastle.